All right, so we are going to move on to our next session now. We have 30 minutes with Oscar Cerezales. He is the Global Executive Vice President Corporate at MCI Group. Oscar is based in Singapore. I've seen him speak a number of times. He's an excellent speaker. He's got a lot of good ideas and innovative insights into the future of our industry. And the next 25 minutes, he's going to share some of those views with us. And then we'll leave 5 minutes at the end for any Q&A. So with that, we'll head straight into Oscar.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Faye. Thank you, Michael, and other panelists. Great session. Look, what you're going to do today is just a little bit of, we're not going to do prediction. We're not going to do crystal balling. We're going to reflect and we're going to think. I'm not going to give you what's going to happen in X years. What I want to share with you today is I'm going to share the ingredients and I want you to think, because all of us, each of us, we have a different reality. The first is thinking about what happened. And what happened is we just faced what the economists call a black swan kind of event. And a black swan is an event that has a huge impact, a global impact. Number two, they have also huge ramifications. And number three, it's kind of obvious, but it's obvious in hindsight. So if you think about a black swan event, you also need to think about all these huge ramifications. Things change forever. So think about other black swan events that we've faced. 9/11 New York, that changed the way we travel. Think about World War I. There was another black swan event that changed the whole geopolitics of the burst of the bubble, of the dot-com bubble a couple of decades ago. They've changed the way we buy stuff today, we consume content, the whole digital era. So yes, COVID is a black swan event. Now, what do you need for a black swan event? A couple of things. So number one, standard forecasting tools, it simply may not work. So if you are using your same tools in 2021 to come up with your budget, think about it, because now the rules have changed, okay? The second is we have more noise than ever. Everyone coming up with that's going to happen and that's the future. Do this, don't do that. There's a lot of noise out there. How do we separate the signal from the noise? The third would be, of course, there are huge challenges ahead of us, but also there are huge opportunities, but they're more polarized than ever. How are we going to discover both? And finally, think about trends. Actually, in the black swan event is not bringing a lot of trends per se. Actually, their trends already exist before a black swan event. There has been under compression or accelerated. So think and reflect about all those 4 points. Now, that's the black swan. Let's think about the future. Let's think about the impact and let's think about what will happen. Okay? So what will happen? It's clear. Events, exhibitions, product launches, marketing spend. We all know they're going to be first, short term, even mid-term, they're going to be smaller than it used to be. They're going to be more national. They're going to have all a digital component. They're going to have a phased approach, and they're going to be a lot of opportunities and challenges. But guess, Mark didn't ask me to come up and share this with you because this is pretty obvious, right? This is stuff that you know already, but actually, this is stuff that you can read and watch 90% of all the white papers and panels and speeches in our industry. So let's move forward. Let's plan the future. And by planning the future, the key question that is arising is, oh wait, how do I plan for the future when there's a high degree of uncertainty out there? So, we're in a VUCA world, right? It's a world which is full of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So how do we deal with the lack of visibility and the lack of certainty? Well, that's scenario planning. And scenario planning is a methodology that governments and corporates have been using for decades now. And it starts with an issue. So what's the issue? Well, it's pretty simple. The issue is that you have a lot of data. All of us, all organizations, we have a lot of data. It's easy to gather. However, the data is speaking about the past. It's not speaking about the future. It has different margins, different rules, different players. So how do we do this? How do we do scenario planning? So scenario planning basically is a foresight process. And I'm not going to here to predict what's going to happen in the future. If I knew about the future, I won't be here. I will create my own company, I will be rich tomorrow. So when I share with you, there are different realities that may happen. Okay? So let's go for it. So as I said, we have in front of us a lot of uncertainties. So what uncertainties will define our future? Well, a number of them. I'm just bringing today only 8. We can have with 25 you want. So number one, think about consumption. How do we consume today and how will we consume tomorrow after the pandemic? Education, think about media, think about content in general, and reflect on how this has changed organizations forever. Think also about this potential crisis. Is it going to be a short term? Is it going to be a long term? The whole thing on recovery. Also reflect on what's going to be a little bit of, if you will, and you think about your own business model, right? Think about what restrictions your business model will have. Think about restrictions on, as we just watched in the previous panel, on travel, on security, on health, etc. Reflect on the economic recovery. That's going to be, think about the speed, think about the shape. It's going to be L, it's going to be W. That's going to impact all of us. Also think about the marketing. Think about how organizations, how they're going to deal with marketing. Are they going to spend more or less than before the pandemic? Are they going to balance face-to-face or digital? It's going to be digital more or less. They're going to outsource or in-source, right? Think about governments. Think about the way they're supporting our industry with grants, with cash, or they're not doing it. Think about geopolitics. Think about the overall spend to help the economy. Also, reflect on technology, how technology is reshaping everything. I'm not just thinking on the typical virtual platforms. Think about how AI or blockchain are going to change everything. And finally, very important, think about organizations. How your organization, how your customers are changing the way they work, the way they are managing remote workers, how they are restructuring their teams, how they are outsourcing differently. So point is, there are 8 ingredients. So depending on what ingredients you play with and in what proportion, you will come up with one or another cocktail, right? So I'm going to share with you 3 very simple scenarios. So normally this is a process that takes is a workshop, half a day. We're going to do it in 5 minutes. So what I did is I logged a few of the ingredients, I play around that, and I came up with 3 feasible scenarios. So the number one is what I call back to the future. So back to the future is after 1 year of craziness, we're just back to normal in a way. The second scenario is actually the opposite. Probably here, the recovery takes longer, and we're moving towards an e-planet, low touch, we buy, we consume, everything is digital. Digital takes the lead. And the third scenario is what I call the omni-future. And the omni-future is what marketing takes the lead. They play with a full omni-channel, and there's an overspend in terms of marketing. Now, let's deep dive in each of them. So back to the future. What I'm locking here, as I said, is basically that there are going to be some travel restrictions, some even restrictions, but low. But marketing spend is back to 2019 levels. So think about your customers again. What happened with the organizations in our industry? The level of readiness, we're getting more, I would say, efficient, because in 1 year process, all of us, we need to be more focused, we need to be more pragmatic, and also we are redesigning our offering. We might come up with new products, services, methodologies, business models. Or on the contrary, instead of selling 10 products, we're selling only 3 products. We have a full focus. So we have a level of readiness in these 2 points. Now, question is, what's going to be the impact for all of us, for the industry? Well, a few of them. So number one, there is what I call the next degree of consolidation. Because of this year, because people are running out of cash, because some are not surviving, there is a need of a small degree of consolidation. The number 2, it's of the outsourcing. there is the modern outsourcing out there. Organizations, they need to outsource not only the transactional stuff, but some of the core stuff is outsourced, and that becomes more adaptable and flexible and actually faster, right? We're moving then to others like variable costing, for example, that organizations want to be again flexible and they need to outsource because they are scared about a future crisis, maybe. And finally, all the skills that are associated with hybrid. So think about organizations that are bringing in copywriters, coders, neuroscientists to the or our organizations. Now let's move to the second one, is what I call the e-planet. The e-planet, what I'm looking here, there are two components. The marketing spend is heavily digital. Organizations are spending a lot in digital. There are travel and event restrictions, mid or high level restrictions. So what happened is that we all will come up with business models. Business models are good in low touch. We know how to make money in digital, and there is a high degree of automation. And obviously here, there are a lot of impacts. So number one, it's the long tail economics. And the long tail economics is an economic that our industry will change and will make money out of volume and low margins rather than big events and big margins. So that's a full change of business models, right? The number two is what I call the end of the geographical strategies. It makes no sense when everything is digital to have teams that we call it APAC or EMEA or Latin America. Their teams are built around capabilities, hubs, shared services. Third is what I call data. And you know the data game. But the data game is how do we monetize communities? Organizations become better and better monetized communities. And that means that we are able to sell patterns, not only data, and we can predict everything about the community that we're running. And finally, there's a completely redesigned new ecosystem. So if you think about a convention bureau, a tourism board, how the pre-existing KPIs on arrivals, on international delegates, on economic impact, a number of it changed completely. If you think about a convention center, if you think professional event organizer, exhibition organizer, everything changes, KPIs changes, everything changes. So it's a completely and radical change in the ecosystem. The next one is what I call the omni-future. In the omni-future, what happens? In the omni-future, there's a huge increase in the marketing spend across all channels, the current channels and future channels, as we call the omni-channel. And all channels are connected. And on top of that, what I'm looking is that governments, destination, they see the my general speaker impact as highly strategic. And we know that that happens today in a few countries, in a few destinations, but not in at all. So that happens, is strategic. The level of readiness here is that the industry with new players and new rules and new everything, they become really effective when it comes to capture the extra spend in different channels. So if you're a corporation, you may spend your money in mobile, in digital, in exhibitions, in TV, in radio, in the whole inbound. So there will be more and more and more and more and more channels today. And the industry becomes also very good at building community solutions. And what do I mean by that? By building community, I mean that organizations become really good at creating new communities around products and services, but also they become really good at growing communities, engaging communities, replicating communities, tracking communities, and monetizing communities. Now, what's the impact of the third scenario? So number one, there's a fragmented market. There's a huge marketing increase and spend increase. So there are more events than ever. But as they're playing with a lot of channels, they're going to be smaller events. So there's good and bad news, right? Second, there is an exponential growth when it comes to hybrid events. There are a lot of hybrid events. There will be more than ever, right? The third is that economic development agencies, they take over. Governments understand that this is strategic. Economic development agencies, institutions where we have a lot of budgets and money, they take over. And it's not that convention bureaus or tourism boards, they become like a second or third layer. They restructure everything, but economic development takes the lead. There are going to be new KPIs. So KPIs that most of the startups and the very common digital world, whether it is lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, there's also return on investment and experience, the new KPIs and new methodologies that needs to be agreed. So there are going to be methodologies globally agreed around the economic, direct and indirect impact and legacies and around new KPIs. So also is a bit of a change, right? So these are three examples of scenarios. So I'm just telling you, why don't you sit down with your teams? Is ask for a professional, do you on your own, lock a few uncertainties, analyze the level of readiness of your organization, and then think and reflect on the different implications and impacts, and there you will find the opportunities and also the challenges. Few tips on the scenarios. Okay? Remember, back to future, we're back to normal, e-planet, all goes digital, omni-future, marketing is king. So number one, careful with your own bias. We are all biased. We tend to stereotype, we tend to pay attention to what we want to pay attention on the other, etc. So bias, it's something that goes against scenario planning. You need to be really, really neutral in your analysis. Linked to that, you need to isolate the feasibility of a scenario versus your own interest. So there are some scenarios here, you may say, oh, I don't like that one. Well, you don't like that one because it's impacting negatively in your current organization. Does not mean that it's feasible. So careful with that. The number three is, because of all these huge opportunities and challenges, your ideation, prototyping, testing kind of process, it needs to be so fast and so agile around opportunities that you need to put something effective again, and efficient and adaptable. Then my next would be on intersections. In the intersection of all these features is where the magic will happen. Now I know what you're thinking. Are you thinking, I don't like the first one, I think second will happen, or the third recombination? Of course. This is the game, right? We're putting on the table plausible, feasible scenarios. And everything may happen, or nothing may happen, or two elements for the first scenario and another element for the third scenario. That's what you need to analyze. And also, finally, there might be there other features, absolutely. If you start playing with different ingredients, you can come up with 4, with 5, 25 different scenarios. My advice is don't go over 4. Just simplify your life, analyze the intersections, and there's where the magic happens with the opportunities and challenges. Be neutral, careful with your biases, and then test, prototype, go fast to market. Now, I'm going to close with a little bit the what I call the so what. So, okay, thank you, Oscar. We got all these scenarios. Now what? You need to reflect on your business model. So once you have clear, okay, there are different scenarios, think about your model. And a business model can be super complicated or can be easy. That one, simple. What is your offering? Why are you profitable? Who is your audience or your customer, your users, and how you are basically delivering the value. So you need a value proposition, a revenue and cost model, and a value chain. Once this is clear, if I were you, I will ask myself a number of questions. So 8 questions, for example, around your business model and this future. So the number one is, are you really solving future customer needs? Not only current, but future customer needs as linked to value proposition, right? Is your solution based in convenience? Not in price, not in volume, but in convenience. Think about that. Reflect. There's a lot of tricky questions in here. Is your business model replicable? It has a link to scalability. And again, I'm sure that you're tempted to say yes. Reflect and reflect again. Number 4, do you have what we call an unfair competitive advantage, something that cannot be easily copied by others, that you are creating the moat, a nice moat for your business model? Now, what about having your value chain? Do you have a really great partners ecosystem? Think about your JVs, think about your alliances, think about your co-marketing, think about the allies that you need in the future, not in the present, okay? Also think about the talents and the skills that you need for your future business model. Also think about your switching costs. How difficult is for your customers to leave you or switch to another product or service, competitor, platform, or whatever? And finally, do you know your future KPIs? What success will look like for you? And I tell you again, I probably your first answer to other 8 questions are clear, easy, simple. It's going to be yes and positive. Play devil's advocate with yourself. With that said, and this is a quote that I never know if it's from Drucker or Lincoln, depending on how you Google, you find it. But I think that, look, I don't know. I cannot predict the future, but I think that we can all create instead of predict the future, playing with different uncertainties. So with that all said, thank you very much. Thank you, Mark, and thank you all the audience for being with me for this 25 minutes. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Oscar. That was really insightful. I particularly like your comment about if our models are based on convenience. That definitely gives us something to think about. You spent a little bit of time on how marketing spend might change. I wonder if you might take a minute or two more. You said you weren't going to use a crystal ball, but maybe I'll ask you to try a little bit. Just to talk about how you see marketing spend changing by our core groups, exhibitors and visitors in a post-COVID world. Any extra thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think that the devil's in the details. When we're thinking about the future of exhibition digital, it's not only marketing, but it's also travel. So there are two. If you only, so they're intertwined, right? But if you only think in marketing, most of the research out there and they tell you that the marketing spend looks like it's going to be it will be the same like pre-pandemic, or we're going to increase. But also, all researchers that I've seen, and also clients that we're talking to, it looks like it's going to be more and more and more fragmented. As I said, they're going to use more channels to test the effectiveness of the marketing spend. So for some exhibitions and some clusters, there's going to be great news, because in that particular cluster or industry, they're going to help. They're going to be an exhibition is a great channel. Maybe for more mature sectors, that's not the great news. But anyway, I think the opportunity comes for exhibitions becoming one of the key channels, which is today an omni-channel spend for marketeers.
And what about, you talked a little bit about skills. There's been a number of questions that have come in from delegates asking about which skills do you think are going to need to be prioritized with MCI? Which skills are you guys investing in? And do you think it's going to be different? The new skill types needed is going to be different for different types of events?
So a couple of things here. MCI, for example, right? Before COVID, and for example, in Asia Pacific, I would say that 8 out of 10 new talents, they had no event / hospitality / tourism kind of background. Now probably it's 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. So actually this, again, COVID is accelerating everything. So what are those skills? So obviously there is tech skills. So again, I'm talking about coders, for example. We're bringing also neuroscientists, neuromarketeers, because the digital component on overall activations, that you need this neuromarketing skills to be applied in how you design events, for example. We're also bringing, let's put it that way, we're also bringing new skills without bringing it. So what we're doing is there are a number of skills that, because of volume, we don't want them inside our company. That's where we're creating what we think is the right ecosystem, and we're outsourcing that. So sometimes it's just a vendor, sometimes it's a JV of a partnership, and sometimes it's a spin-off. So what we do is there are certain MCI teams that we're creating new brands or new companies, and we are kind of outsourcing, and of course we got to stay some skills. So we're playing because we kind of bring all the skills. Also, what we need to reflect is that our industry, for some, just for some, not always, for some skills, they're not that attractive and that sexy.
Right. We're going to have to wrap up, but I want to ask you for one last quick question, quick answer. What's the event you're most looking forward to attending when we get back to business in a post-COVID world?
A professional event, you mean?
Yeah, well, or any event.
I'm a great football supporter. So, and I'm Spanish, and although I'm from
Mm.
Barcelona, I'm a huge supporter of Real Madrid. So, Real Madrid, 100,000 people cheering their stadium. I'll give blood for that.
We all look forward to you enjoying that. All right, Oscar, great session. I wish you could hear the applause here in the room.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you,
All
Mark.
right,
Thank you
really
too.
appreciate it. Thanks, Oscar. All right, everyone. So that concludes Oscar's session. We're going to take a 15-minute break and come back with our final session of the morning, where Matthias is going to tell us about the event that he organized in Bangkok in September, an event in COVID. Thanks very much.